Okay, let's get cracking. Here you go, Ray. We are on tonight's class is as a zechut for Daniel Yaakov ben. I don't know what his father's name is. All right, we're on page Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph, and we just finished the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is rolling off of the Mishnah that we just read. If you're following the art school, we're on 23a1. Gemara says, "My ta'ama." What is the reason for this? It doesn't tell us though what this is. The Gemara answers to the question we don't yet understand. Mishum nikla, because the pasuk says, "And your brother will be kala," it will be cheapened, it will be demeaned, it will be embarrassed in your eyes. So the question is, what exactly are we referring to over here? What's the Gemara? What's the Mishnah? What is the Gemara asking? My ta'ama. So one of the simple ways of understanding this question is it's rolling off the last thing in the Mishnah. If you remember, the last thing in the Mishnah was that if a person in the process of getting Makkot, he soils himself. So the halakha is he's patur from getting the Makkot.
Really?
Why? Yeah, why? And we explained because the point of Makkot was as a deterrent. If the guy is so embarrassed that he's soiled himself, so maybe that's enough and he won't do it. So therefore we won't give him any Makkot. Okay? So the Gemara asks, "My ta'ama, what's the reason?" Answers the Gemara, "Mishum nikla," because he will be demeaned. And look, and he was demeaned. That's one opinion as to how the Gemara is expressing it. Other opinions have a different angle on this. What they're saying is, "My ta'ama," what is the reason? It's not going on the last line of the Mishnah. It's going on the earlier parts of the Mishnah. How come you tear his shirt? What are you ripping the shirt off for? Gemara answers, "Mishum nikla," so that he should be demeaned. What are you bending him over the whipping post for? Mishum nikla. He should be demeaned. Each one of those reasons, though, is stating the fact that we're demeaning him as a Gemara saying that that's the ideal point. Whereas we've already expressed it numerous times that once the person is demeaned, that's already a get out of jail free card. So are we trying to demean the person? Or are we just saying that if it happens, then he's patur? So let's just assume that for the time being, we're going with the last approach, the first approach, that I mentioned, which is that the reason why he's patur is because nikla. That seems to fit not only with our sugya, but with the other gemarot as well. Harry is not with us today. He couldn't make it. But Harry asked, why is it that the Mishnah tells you, I understand all the rest of the parts of the Mishnah are descriptions in what we do. But why does the Mishnah say, and when you rip his shirt, we're not worried if it rips or if it tears? Why is that part of the conversation over here? What is the Mishnah trying to communicate? Sorry?
That must not be the demeaning factor. If it rips, that's not the get out of jail free.
Excellent. So once we see the Gemara's question and we see that all the Mefarshim are asking what it means, maybe that's the way we look at it. The Mishnah says, you're ripping his shirt. And don't think that when you ripped his shirt, now the guy's humiliated. Let's let him off, like other things which do let him off, okay? So the Mishnah is telling you if it rips, mafiyashi, like they say, okay? Second approach would be that the reason why the pasuk is telling you that it rips, that it should rip or not rip, is if it rips, it doesn't. If it doesn't rip, it doesn't. Is that the shaliach bedin, when he rips the shirt, is not obligated to be careful when he does so. Now, I just wanted to share this one thing. There's two different approaches as to how the shirt is ripped from the person when they're revealing his back for the whipping. One opinion is that they pull it up from the bottom. Okay. Now, when you pull a shirt from the bottom up, it doesn't rip. When you're pulling the shirt from the top collar down, and you want to expose his back, but it's closed in the front, what's going to happen to the shirt? The only way it's going to reveal the front down to the heart and the back is only if it rips. So according to the first opinion, it has to rip. There's no other way. According to the first opinion, we're saying don't worry about it. Because anyway, you're lifting it up, he doesn't need to worry and do it in a way because there is a possibility not. According to the second opinion, we're telling you that this is how you do it. You pull it down. Don't worry that it's going to rip, because it will 1,000% rip, but you don't need to be worried about that, i.e., don't ask him to, layani, as if he's in a spa. Take off your shirt, I'll be with you in a moment, right? We don't need to do that, okay? Now, the second thing I want to point out is that we've talked about the fact that there's whipping on the front and on the back. Simply, we went with the opinion of Rambam, which means that you whip him on the back between this shoulder blade and that shoulder blade. Those are 2/3, and 1/3 is on the heart, in the front, on the chest. Okay? The other opinion says that you're not whipping the fellow lengthwise. You're actually whipping him from the side.
You have to hit the front and the back at the same time.
So when it talks about it hitting the front from the back, if we're talking about lengthwise, right, that's the length of the whip. That's how it goes. If we're talking about the side, we're talking about literally going around the side of the front of the person. So those are the two opinions. So either one on lengthwise or widthwise, and as well, that would also maybe perhaps fit in with which opinion you're talking about with regards to the shirt. Okay, obviously pulling it down is not enough if you have to whip the guy lengthwise. Okay, so now that we know that, let's continue. Gemara says as follows. Amar Rav Sheshet Mishum Elazar ben Azariah. Rav Sheshet said the name of Rav Elazar ben Azariah. Minayin the Ritzuah Shishel Egel. How do we know that the Ritzuah, that the strap itself needs to be made out of calf, out of Egel? Dichtiv, because it says, Arba'im Yakenu. The Pasuk says, you have to give him 40 lashes. Okay? V'samichle, what's the very next Pasuk? Lo tachsom shor b'disho. The Pasuk then continues with a completely unconnected thing, which is that you should not muzzle the ox when he's plowing the field. Okay? Since you told me the law of whipping, and then the very next verse discussed an ox, so we assume that the connection, the smichut, like we said, the connection, the proximity of this Pasuk to that Pasuk is to come to tell you, when I mentioned whipping him, you're whipping with the hide or the skin of an ox. Okay? So that comes from, that tells us the material of the whip. The Gemara continues, same similar type of idea. When you have a yibama, what's a yibama? A woman gets married to a man. They have no children. The man dies. So the halacha is she's supposed to marry his brother, and they'll have a child, and the child will be named after the brother that passed away without having any children. And through that, the man's legacy and his name lives on. Okay, that's the law of Yibum. What happens if this woman, she falls to the brother, and her husband, Greek god, beautiful. The next guy in line, his brother, Azi, was not blessed with the looks. He got more of the brains. Had as mukashchin, meaning he's covered in boils. Guy looks horrible. Okay, so now she falls to this guy. She never chose to marry him. What's the halacha? Minayin, how do you know she'en chosmin ota, that you don't muzzle her, yani you don't not let her have an opinion about whether or not she marries him? The Gemara says, "Dechtiv lo tachson b'shor b'disho," because that pasuk that we just discussed, don't muzzle the ox when you're threshing with it, when you're plowing with it. V'samichle, and what comes right after that pasuk? Ki yeshvu achim yachdav, when brothers will sit together. Okay? When the brothers will live together and then one of them dies and the Yibama has to marry. So the thing that comes after the story of muzzling the ox is the story of Yibum. So why are those two things together? The proximity is to tell you that the same way you didn't muzzle over here, you don't muzzle her over there as well. And she's able to say, I refuse to marry this guy. Now what happens if she refuses? Excellent. So she can't just walk away. She has chalitza, but she has the prerogative to be able to say, I don't want yibum with this guy because he's mukashchin. The guy is covered in boils. Okay.
So she's allowed.
She's allowed, yes. Okay. Gemara continues.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I thought we said before that the whip is made from a donkey skin.
We said before that we add to the whip a hide of a donkey. So we'll see that in just a minute, okay? The Gemara continues, the third teaching. So what did we do? We did first pasuk to the second, then we did the second pasuk to the third. Now we're going to see what the Gemara over here says. A similar concept of smichut, of proximal learning. Kilu oved avodat kochavim. If a person doesn't treat the Muadim, the holidays, with the proper respect, it's as if he was obed avodah zarah. Heavy. Dichtiv, because it says, Elohim masecha lo taseh lach, do not make for yourself Elohim masecha, gods that are melted down materials. Samichle, what's the very next pasuk? It Chag HaMatzot tishmor. You have to guard and protect the Chag HaMatzot. So you see that the Torah was putting idol worship right next to the guarding of the Muadim. To teach you that one who does not guard the Muadim correctly, has a very, very negative connotation in the eyes of God. Finally, person who speaks Lashon Hara, or a person who accepts Lashon Hara. What does it mean to accept Lashon Hara? I tell you, this guy is a thief, and you say, wow, okay, and you believe it, okay? So Mekabel Lashon Hara means you believe it. It doesn't mean you're there when you says it, but you believe it, you accept it. Someone who bears false witness. The guy deserves to be tossed to the dogs. Because it says, throw him to the dogs. Now what's it talking about over there? There it's talking about that if you slaughter an animal, and then you find out that there was holes in the lungs, in other words, the animal was a terefa. What does terefa mean? It means that the animal, if you would have left it alone, would have died of natural causes. It was a sick animal. That's what the classic term terefa means, okay? So, you have a terefa, what's the halakha? What do you do with that meat? Throw it to the dogs. Why do we throw it to the dogs? We discussed this. Because when the Jewish people left Egypt, the dogs, the dogs didn't bark at them. They didn't scare the children, the women, when they were leaving Egypt. They are given a reward eternally that when a Jew has a shechita that turns out to be terefa, he feeds it to the dogs. That's an eternal reward for the dogs for not barking in Mitzrayim. Huh?
I never knew that.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yep.
2 examples of that in the Torah. What's the other example?
The donkey.
Nope.
Not the spider.
Nope.
From Rabbi Akiva.
Nope.
The snake will always eat the dust.
Nope. The birds on Parashat Bishalach, we leave out Parashat Shirah, we leave out food for the birds. Why do we leave out food for the birds? Because in that parasha, in Parashat Bishalach, the Datan Avirah, the perennial troublemakers, they thought, you know what, Moshe said if you leave out the man, it's going to get ruined. Moshe said if on Shabbat the portion's not going to come, we're going to prove him wrong. They saved the portion like they were told. Then in the morning, what did they do? They went out, or in the evening, and they put out all the extra man that they saved. And then they were going to show in the morning, look, you see I got man. Moshe is wrong. The birds came and they saw the man, and they ate it up, so there should be no example, no way for these men to use this as a humiliating expression of God's commandment and of Moshe, his servant. And as reward for the birds, the payback for the birds is that we feed the birds on Parashat Bishalach. Famous question. That's only one day a year. When is the law of Terefa applicable? Every day. So how come you gave the dogs more than you gave the birds? Beautiful answer is that the dogs did something that was against their nature. The birds did something that they would have done anyway. I would have done it for free. I would have eaten breakfast.
Interesting.
So therefore they get a small reward. But the dogs that held themselves back. This teaches us that when a person does mitzvot or stays away from sinning, and that's in his nature, the reward is minimal. But when a person fights their nature for something, the reward is far greater. Fantastic.
Just to go back to the dogs and barking.
Yeah.
It's just because they didn't scare them, because the Jews were allowed to leave Egypt until Pharaoh changed his mind.
Correct.
So
It's the fact that
they would have woken up.
No, it's not that they would have gotten caught.
Okay.
But when you have dogs barking, vicious dogs that the Egyptians had to terrorize the people. People think also, you're thinking of a dog, you're thinking of an Egyptian G with a Gucci purse and a Chihuahua, right? Think of a German Nazi with his German Shepherd. Right. Those were the dogs that they had. The dogs that were designed to attack. That's terrifying. Uh-huh. So the dogs, when on the evening, lo yeheratz keleb l'shono. Okay. Says the pasuk. So since the pasuk over there says "Lakelev tashlichun," you throw it to the dogs. V'samichle, and it says right after that, "Lo tisa shem hashav," right? You shall not carry God's name. Lo tisa shem hashav. You shall not carry or accept shem hashav, which means a hearing which is false. Okay, so therefore we understand that when someone says something to you which is negative, which is untrue, and you didn't accept it, you see that that's connected to being thrown to the dogs. Okay? So just as those pisukim are right next to each other, anything which really should not be accepted, anything which you hear which should not be accepted, that's the case. Kari benami lo tasi. So just like it says lo tisa shem hashav, in the Torah, there's no vowels. So you could read it lo tisa, you could also read it lo tasi. What is lo tasi? If it was to say lo tasi, there it's that you should not you should not accept it, but you should not cause it to be accepted. So one of them speaks about when you accept such a negative talk. One of them speaks about when you give that talk, when you say that. So one encompasses accepting Lashon Hara, and the second one encompasses speaking Lashon Hara or bearing false witness. In both of those cases, what do we say? We say, Lakev tashlichun oto. So the person deserves to be thrown to the dogs. Interesting concept over here. Let me explain why. When it comes to the first ones, right? When it comes to the first three examples, we learned out an actual halacha from all of those proximal teachings, correct? When it came to this, what are we saying? He deserves to be thrown to the dogs. Are we throwing the guy to the dogs? No. So what is the value in understanding that?
You get Makkot.
What are we learning?
Hara.
Sorry?
You get Makkot for Lashon Hara.
It's a very good question.
Because you get Makkot for bearing false witness, so maybe that's the tie-in.
So what we saw is, if you remember, we learned Mamotzi Shemra already, that you do get. Remember, and the Gemara said, you can't prove from there because it has other things about it which are very strict. The person could have Lokeu Mishalem, right? You could pay and get it. Right. So Motzi Shemra is Lashon Hara.
Yeah.
It's just Lashon Hara, which is true.
So then you're tying the together of Lashon Hara and...
No, I'm just asking, there's no halacha here.
Isn't that a halacha though?
No, it says over here, no, but that's not what we're learning. We're learning that because it's next to La Kelev Tashlichun, no, he's worthy of being thrown to the dogs. But we don't throw him to the dogs. So what are we learning?
Besides for not talking Lashon Hara?
No, there's an Isur not to talk Lashon Hara.
Yeah.
Now put it next to the verse that says throw him to the dogs. But we don't throw him to the dogs. So what'd you teach me?
You're like a
Where's the
dog if
halacha?
you...
So what?
I don't know.
So what does that mean? You like a
Throwing
dog?
to the dogs. Was that a common thing?
Throwing to the dogs is a halacha with regards to taref meat.
Yeah.
But we're learning over here that since it was next to the words of Lo Tisa Shem Hashav, so these three people, a speaker of Lashon Hara, a receiver, acceptor of Lashon Hara, and a person who speaks, who bears false witness, he's worthy of being thrown to the dogs. What does that tell me? The answer is, the answer is that when the Torah speaks, the way the Torah speaks actually carries with it a way of us understanding how bad the Torah thought that action was. So as an example, when the Torah says about something that it's an abomination, what changes because it's called an abomination? Nothing. But why did the Torah call it an abomination? So that you would know that even if there isn't a different punishment, this is disgusting in God's eyes. There you go. All of our haremot. So the idea of telling me that it's toeva is very similar to the idea of saying a guy like this is worthy of being thrown to the dogs. I have another answer. You know, my second answer is when we talked about throwing to the dogs, what were we talking about?
Meat.
What kind of meat specifically?
Terefa.
Terefa. Meat that what?
Not kosher.
But why is it not kosher?
Because the lungs...
It would have died.
Because it would have died. That's what the pasuk is telling you.
That what?
Then this is your hidush.
That's my hidush.
I love your hidush.
It's a deed.
That God is telling you, I'm going to pay you back. This is what's waiting for you. The dying of terefa means you're a dead man walking. It looks like you're doing the shechita, but the shechita is not what killed this animal. Animal was going to die anyway. It's telling you the severity of the punishment that a person gets for lashon hara min hashamayim. Okay? All right, let's continue. The Gemara says as follows. Ushte ritzuot, and two straps, right, up and down, run up and down the strap. The Gemara says, Tana, we learned the Braita, shel hamor, that these extra straps were from a donkey. Kididarish au glila, this glila, who's this glila? Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, right, from the Galil. He learned, alea derav chizda, okay? I'm assuming it's Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, right? He learned, and he said, derav chizda, Yada shor koneu, v'chamor evus be'alav. Yisrael lo yada. The pasuk says, every shor, every ox, it knows its master. Okay. Right? The master comes in, the ox goes to him, he nuzzles his nose against the guy. He knows him. Chamor evus be'alav. The chamor knows the feeding bag of his master. They know each other. There's a connection between the animal and its master. Yisrael lo yada. But my Yisrael, I'm the one that feeds them. I'm their owner. I'm their master. But sometimes they forget that I'm their master. That's the language. It's in the Navi. Okay?
And who said this?
Hashem says it to the Jewish people through the Navi. Okay? Says in Yeshaya. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Yavo mi shemakir evus be'alav. Let the one who knows his master's feeding bag, okay? Let him come v'yipara mi she'eno makir evus be'alav. Let him pay back for the one that doesn't recognize his master. Who are we referring to?
The person.
The person, excellent. Whoa. So says the Hahuk Lila'ah.
Go back.
The Navi says, an ox and a donkey, they know their master. Okay. Israel doesn't know his master when he sins. So says God, the Hahuk Lila'ah explained that the complaint against the Jew, where does it come from? From the ox and the donkey. That the ox and the donkey, they're the musar to the Jew. Because look, even they knew how to recognize their master. Let the ones who recognize their master come and get the payback from the one who forgot how to recognize his master. So what do we start by telling you? That the whip is made out of shor. But here in the pasuk, the Navi said, shor and chamor. So therefore, what do you see? That the donkey is also part of the...
It's a combo?
It's a combo, shor hamor. Like turducken, just it hurts much more. Mimi. Yavo mi. Shemakir evus be'alav yipara. Misheno makir evus be'alav. So therefore, the donkey is also worked in to the sides of the whip of the made out of calfskin. The Gemara continues, Yada tefach. The handle of the whip is tefah, okay? And the Gemara continues and says, how long is it? It goes long enough that the end of it reaches the beginning of the stomach. So if you remember, if we're talking about whipping him lengthwise, it's wrapping around his shoulders coming to the back, to the bottom. If you're talking about sideways, you're talking about a very short whip. Right? The two opinions, which way, are going to dictate how long this whip actually is. Gemara continues, what do we learn from here? If you're telling me that it has to reach his stomach, then that means if you have a guy, Andre the Giant, how much whip do you need to reach around the guy's stomach? Tons. You need a lot of whip. You have Danny DeVito, right? It's not the same size. Says Abaye, they must have had a bunch of whips there. Chad v'chad lefum gabe avdinan le. Amale Rava said, "Imken nafish lirutzuot tuba." They would need 1,000 whips in the bedin. Ela amarav Rava said, "We're talking about avakta itle." The whip had a knot at the bottom, and all you needed to do kibai miktale. When you needed to have less whip, you would tie it up. Kibai marpela. When you need more, you open up the knot. You make it longer, right? You know that every time you have a guy who can't fit his tefillin, always fun to find the rabbi. Rabbi opens up the knot. Same item. The same rabbi opens up the tefillin, opens up the knot on the on the whip in the bedin. Gemara continues and says, "Malkin oto." We whip him, as we said, 1/3 in the front, 2/3 in the back. Gemara says, "Meaning, how do I know this? Where do we know that you divide them up into front and back?" Amar Rav Kana said, "Ta'makra," because the pasuk says, "Vipilo hashofet," and the shofet will cast him down, right? As we discuss what that means. V'yikau lifanav, and he will hit him lifanav in front of him. Kiderish ato b'mispar. But then it continues and says, according to his wickedness b'mispar in counting. So, what does that mean? How do you read that? V'yikau lifanav, and he'll hit him in the front. That means that he hits his front. But then it continues and says, Kiderish ato b'mispar. You're going to continue. Now, if the rest of that is not in his front, where is it? In the back. So therefore, the first part is in the front, the second part in the back. Why didn't we divide it half-half? The answer is, Rish'a achat milfanav, shte rish'auyot me'acharav. It says, Kideh rish'ato. According to his rish'ato, it gives you 2 b'mispar, right? So,
If it's in threes, you couldn't always, how would you split it up evenly? Let's say he only gets 3 Makkot, you wouldn't be able to give
do 1, 1, 1.
But he was only getting 3, 1 in the front.
2 in the back.
No, but that's why you can't split it.
I don't understand.
If I have 3, I can't get even.
If I have 3 makot, yeah, I get 1 in the front and 2 in the back. It's always 1/3, 2/3. Always.
Okay.
How do you
Okay.
get to the back based upon this pasuk? I don't get it.
Because it says, I'm going to hit you in the front and then I'm going to hit you. If you know, it's very funny. You know, I'm cracking up. You said this. Okay, I'm going to give you a very morbid place I learned this from. We just got an invitation, and the invitation says, I'm just going to give you a sketch name. Okay, on the bottom, the grandparents, Mrs. Sarah, and David Cohen. Alav Shalom. Who's dead?
David.
David. If she was dead and he was not dead, where would you say Alav Shalom?
Sarah.
Before.
Sarah, Aleh Shalom, and David Cohen. Okay? How do you write that they're both dead? Miss Sarah, Aleh Shalom, and David, Aleh Shalom. Go ahead. Right? That's how you'd imagine it. Okay? That's exactly this pasuk. V'hikau lifanav, and I'll hit him in front of him, in the front. Kiderish ato, according to his wickedness. If all of it was lifanav, I would say kiderish ato v'mispar, v'hikau lifanav. Since it puts lifanav, and then after lifanav, it talks about hitting him again, I understand.
I don't
What?
see the pasuk. You're not looking at the whole pasuk.
Read where's the pasuk? The pasuk.
V'pilo hashofet
V'pilo v'hikau lifanav.
v'hikau.
Okay? Kidei rishato b'mispar.
Yeah.
You will hit him according to his wickedness by number.
Okay.
So if it continues talking about how many numbers you should hit him after it already said the word lifanav. That's like Mrs. Sylvie, Aleh Shalom, and David. David's alive.
Why, but wouldn't you think it just means and hit him in the front and then you hit him? Like every time you talk about hit him, it's in the front because in the beginning you said we're hitting him.
No, you would put it afterwards. You wouldn't talk about more hitting after you described it in the front. Okay? So what is so what's the why is it 2/3 and 1/3? The Gemara answers Rish'a echat, one part of the wickedness milefanav. Shte rishauyot, 2 parts are in the back. Why is the 2 parts in the back? What's the kidei rishato? Kidei rishato b'mispar. It gives you rishato and b'mispar according to the number. So we've got 2 words describing the number of his wickedness in the back, and therefore that portion we're giving him on his back. Okay? Gemara continues. En malkin oto. We do not hit the bet din. En malkin oto. You don't hit him sitting. You don't hit him standing. But rather, how do you hit him? When he's bending over. Where do we know? How do we know this? So we explain it. We learn the Mishnah because the Mishnah could have said sitting or standing. What does it mean? Vipilo? It doesn't say lying down. It says it's in between where he's bending over the whipping post. How do I know the Ritzuah? How do I know that the Ritzuah is folded over? Okay, so it's doubled over on itself. Okay, so as an example, let's say you take the Ritzuah, you take 1 calf strip. Remember, there was 2 opinions in the Mishnah. You take 1 long piece of leather, and then you double it across on itself, and then you cut it down the side. So what are you left with? 2. How about if you took 2 straps of leather, and then you cut them across the middle? What are you left with? 4. So you take 2 calf strips, and you fold them over, and you cut it along that fold, and then you're left with 4. So where do we get it from? The Ritzuah. How do you know that Ritzuah she muchpelet sheneemar? Because it says v'hipilo, and he will cast them down. And you could read the word v'hipilo as if it would say v'hichpilo. Okay, which means, and you will double it. Okay, so just 1 second, I want to show you something interesting here. Is it?
Heal me. Cast down.
Where is this? Oh, did I might have seen it in the Avodat Makkot. Okay, I might have. I wanted to show you the Avodat Makkot inside. Okay, so we'll continue. So he asks him, where do we learn this from? We learn it from V'hichpilo. The Gemara says, you're learning, however we understand this, you're learning this lesson from the word V'hichpilo, and it will be folded over on itself, meaning that you'll double, that we're gonna have double the amount of straps in the thing. But if you just told me that you needed the word v'hipilo to tell you that the way you hit him is when he's bent over, not lying down, not standing, okay? Can't learn two things from one word. Imken, says the Gemara, if v'hipilo is only telling you that you need to be on the whipping post, lichtov kra, the pasuk should say yetehu, you should bend him. My hipilo, why do we use the word hipilo, which sounds like you're almost throwing him down? Shma mina tarti, we learn from here too. Now, let's just ask. I could use either of two words, correct? So if I would have used the other word, you would have asked me why I didn't use this word. So why does that open me up to learn another lesson here? You hear the question? One more time. We're learning from v'hipilo, v'hichpilo. That you double the number on the whips. How do you do it? By bending it and cutting it. Okay? Ask the Gemara, but I already used that to tell you that you have to bend the guy over the post. Answers the Gemara, well, you could have used another word, yateo. So since you didn't use that word, so now I could use...
Easy way out.
What? No, why does that make it extra? If it would have used that word, so then you would ask me why I didn't use this one. The answer is, listen carefully. Yateo, what does the word yateo mean? Bend. Which is a better word? Yateo or v'hipilo? Yateo is the better word. Why?
What do they both mean?
Yateo means you'll bend them over.
Okay.
Hipilo means, literally, it sounds like the word, and you'll make him fall down. You'll cast him down. I could have thought that hipilo means that the guy gets thrown down on the floor.
Okay, fair.
From lashon nefila. So which word is the better word? Yateu. From the fact that I didn't use yateu, I used the word v'hipilo, which is not as good because you're liable to mix up the meaning of the word. I must have had a reason why I preferred the word v'hipilo. The answer is because v'hipilo is closer to the v'hichpilo, which is what I'm trying to say. Got it? So that's what the Gemara is answering. That's how you learn both lessons. And you will double it over to cut it to get. That gives us the four strap.
Where is Ichpilo in the sense of where he bends him? Like, what's the essence there to Ichpilo?
Sorry?
But what's the Ichpilo in the bending?
What do you mean? What's the Ichpilo?
When you say when he pilo,
V'hipilo means he'll bend them over. Okay.
So where is Ichpilo gets into that action?
Nothing. The Gemara is just saying that the word sounds v'hipilo and v'hichpilo, they sound similar.
Yeah, but who cares?
Sorry?
Why does this matter?
Why does it matter? It depends on how you're making the whip for Makkot.
I still don't understand how the whip is made.
So
They said it has a handle.
still goes
Yes.
back
How could you have a handle if you're folding it over?
What, scotch?
No.
No. Take one strap, like one.
When I cut the strap, so I have a long strap.
And you're cutting it for.
I have one strap. Let's say, imagine a wide strap. Then I cut it, I fold it over, and I cut it down on the fold. How many straps I have? Now I have two.
got it.
So I just take two of those,
Okay.
and now I make them four. Okay? That's it. But the Gemara wanted to know, where do we learn that from? The answer is, v'ich below, that you fold over the original strap, illustrating that there's more than one. Okay? Now, there's some opinions that do not have this whole dirasha in the Gemara. Okay?
Like why it matters? Like
No, v'ich below. This dirasha of v'ich below.
So על אחת כמה וכמה, והכפילו, so if you whip him
Yeah.
with a strap that is like 4, that becomes like 4, then it's not 39 anymore. It's like even, let's say.
No, it's 39 of
But
that.
if it's stranded, okay, it becomes one piece. But if it's 4 and you whip him like that, you
supposed to
whip
hurt.
him 4 times.
No, yeah, but the pasuk is telling you that the whip I talked about was this 4-headed whip. By the way, you know what I thought was interesting? In your mind, my first thought was, wow, the guy went from 1 whip to 2 whips, and then the other opinion holds 2 whips to 4 whips. Hadda's really losing out, you know? But actually, have you ever seen people use a whip? Have you ever used a whip in your life? Like a proper whip?
Unfortunately.
I was zoche in Australia
Get one.
to work with a proper whip. Okay? It is unbelievable. No, it's not just that it hurts. Yeah, if you learn, they teach you how to crack it. And you can actually, and you see the guys, they really know what they're doing. They're sitting there knocking things off of a
That's a different type of whip.
very different type of whip.
That hurts more than the four one.
That's where I'm going with this. If you quadruple that whip, it actually takes away from the ability to hit with much more force.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, let's continue. Don't worry, I'm sure it still hurt. Okay, says the Mishnah. Not volunteering for any of this. The Mishnah continues. Hamakeh makeh biyado. If the person who hits biyado with one hand, with all of his koach, like we explained, so that later on, we can't say, oh, you didn't hit it, you killed him, right? Because the guy, he was supposed to give it as much as he could. Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis learned, in ma'amidin chazanin, ela chasere koach v'yitere mada. You know what we chose? We chose the smartest guy in the room, and we chose the guy who was the weakest guy. We want the guy whipping to be a hazik case. The guy could barely, bring it down. Why? That way it doesn't hurt as much. And we want him to have superior intelligence. We want the guy to be very, very smart, so he knows not to go over the extra amount. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu chasere mada v'yitere koach." No, you don't have to do that. Even if the guy is not so smart, v'yitere koach, and he's very strong, you could still appoint him as the guy who's in charge of administering the Makkot. So the first opinion, Rabbi Yehuda was saying, the Chachamim was saying that we're looking for a guy who's weak to give the Makkot. Rabbi Yehuda is saying, no, there's no such law. Even if the guy is a stronger guy, whoever that you appoint, however strong he is, that's what it is. Okay? Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Kavatet Rabbi Yehuda mistabra. I think I have a proof that proves that Rabbi Yehuda is correct. Why? Because the pasuk says, Lo Yosif pen Yosif. We want to make sure that the guy does not go over the prescribed number of of a makot that he's supposed to get. He has to give exactly the right amount. Okay? If you want to say the guy is a guy who doesn't know so much, that's why the Torah has to warn him, don't go more. Right? The guy's a dib. Okay? But if the guy is wise, he knows a tremendous amount of the Torah, do you have to warn him? They know that whatever the amount that the Beit Din already said, that's how much you have to give. They don't need the warning in the Torah of, be careful, don't give any extra. The Gemara says, Rabbanan, so how do the Chachamim explain the Pasuk, according to what they're saying, that the person's supposed to be wise in mind and weak of strength? They say, no, en mizarzin, ele mizuraz. No. The dib guy who don't know any Torah, he's liable because he doesn't care. So you have to warn the guy who's not a Talmid Chacham more, right? Even if you warn the guy who's a dib, he's still going to go over because he doesn't care. Who's the one that cares? If the Torah said, "Be careful, don't do too much," those are the Chachamim. So en mizarzin el mizurazin. As an example, if I tell people this tefillah is very important, who's going to take those words seriously? The people who take praying seriously. People don't take it seriously anyway. They're not the ones that are listening. That's the rule of en mizarzin ela lemezurazin. Then Gemara continues, Tana, we learn, Kishu magbia, when he lifts up the whip, magbia b'shtei yadav, he lifts it up with 2 hands. Ukishu makeh, and when he comes down, makeh b'yado echad. Why? Kiechi delete midideh. In order that he should be able to give, the power that he comes down should be more powerful. Now you think to yourself, who cares? What difference does it make if he's lifting it with two hands or if he's lifting with one hand? Coming down is the same thing.
It's like the car momentum.
No, it's not the same thing.
I lift with two hands,
Yeah.
or I lift with one hand. I come down with one hand. Or I lift with two hands and I come down with one hand.
Momentum.
Why is it harder?
Momentum. Carnival.
Why is
like
one
when you go to
harder?
the
Huh?
You get much more
I think
momentum when you use two hands
maybe
going
you
up.
take more air.
But that would say come down with two hands.
No,
Why?
because when you play golf, okay, if you hold the golf club tight, you don't get the pendulum. You don't get the whip.
Okay.
The whip.
All right.
When you one hand, you get the whip. That hurts much more.
So I understand that that's coming down.
Yeah.
Why does it make a difference what I did in the way up?
Bring it back with both hands.
Because when you bring it up, you get much more momentum. You go up, two hands, it's momentum.
I
I
don't
think
know.
when you go up, you
I'm
get more
imagining that momentum working against you because that momentum is this way
When you breathe,
and this is this way.
That's momentum.
Yeah, you think so?
100%.
So why the Gemara says you lift with two hands, come down with one. Why?
Physics.
Because it's stronger that way. So I asked, why is it stronger? If you're coming down with one hand and that's stronger, I understand. What difference does it make how you got to the zenith of the come down?
I think you're taking more air when you go like this.
So I didn't know. I don't know this.
Yes, it's
You're
physics.
telling me. I'm learning this. Something new for me. I was just thinking. Ultimately, remember this guy has 39 whips to make.
Exhausted for the guy.
Yeah, you're taking more air.
He's using half of his arm strength in lifting every time.
You're supposed to hit him as hard as you can.
Correct. So I'm saying, if every time when he lifts,
First whip,
he's
first, the third
he's
time.
using two hand strength, so he's saving the up strength every time, so he can conserve it for on the way down. I thought maybe that's what the Gemara meant, but you're telling me even in the motion itself, there's more of a motion. I feel like we need to try it. Who's volunteering? Okay, let's continue.
Depends who's behind the whip.
Are we finished?
Are we finished? We are finished. Yes. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.